Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. I'm Amy Shannon, but you can call me Amy. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome, and I hope all is well with you. I'm Amy, and today I'm talking about Frankenstein. And I'm talking about the book and a little bit about the movie and that was created based loosely on the book in 1931. If you haven't seen that original movie, I actually recommend that you do because it's very interesting and you kind of get a feel for, what it was like. They made a movie in 1931. Of course, it was black and white, and they made a movie called Frankenstein, and it was based off a book, and there was some variations. So I always recommend that if you read a book and it's based off of a movie or vice versa, or some part of the screen. These days it could be streaming or television or whatever they call it anymore, and because then you kind of get the feel for not just what the original author was talking about with the story, but also what the interpretation of that particular book brought out in, through a scriptwriter, a producers, anyone that takes part in a movie, an actor or whatever. So going back to the book, the original book, Frankenstein, was written 1818 by an English author called Mary Shelley. In the book, she refers to Victor Frankenstein. Frankenstein is the last name of Victor, and sometimes, and I've seen this myself, but I think people are kind of getting it if they're familiar with it, that it was, some people assume when you say Frankenstein that you're talking about the monster, and actually the monster never had a name. In the book, it was Victor Frankenstein who created the monster, and in the movie, he was renamed to Henry Frankenstein. The book delves more into the life of Victor Frankenstein, and as he's growing up, and then the wheres and the reasons why he decides to get this, to do these experiments. Basically, he wants to make life out of something that was already dead. So, he was basically creating a life, and it was out of basically body parts. He robbed graves, and he would go to fresh hangings, and he wanted, he was putting this piece by piece together, and while he was creating this life, he realized what he had actually done. And it is such an interesting story that I hadn't read Frankenstein in quite a while, and I was just thinking about some of the classic books I haven't read in a while, and sometimes, there's books that you just want to read or you forgot that you have read, so you read them again, and my memory is terrible, so a lot of times when I read a book for the third or fourth time, or even watch a movie, it's like the first time, and that's just because my brain is strange, but it's not as strange as the brain that he put into his monster. In the beginning of chapter 10, there was this kind of like a little stanza in the middle of the story, and it kind of just, I think it describes like almost everything about the book. The book, I find that is very, when you're reading it, you want to keep in mind that you're reading from an author who wrote it in 1818. The book was published in 1818 anonymously, and then later, when when it was published for the second edition, her name was actually put on the book in 1821. And if you think back to those times, I'm sure that obviously nobody that's listening was there back then, but the way they wrote, the way they spoke, and they used these beautiful, elegant words, and sometimes you just forget all about, with modern day, words and shortenings and abbreviations. So, it kind of brings you back. And, I mean, they use words like alas and, kind of awe-inspiring words that are poetic in of themselves. So, here's a stanza I found in there, and it says, "We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh, or weep. Embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same for, be it joy or sorrow. The path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may never be like his morrow. Naught may endure but mutability." So that kind of shows you how it actually, comes together, and how the words are so incredible. He decides, when he looks at what he has done, he just can't believe what he actually has done. And of course, what he comes out with is a killer, a mind of a criminal, what they called an abnormal brain, piecing together body parts and making them come alive. It's just kind of, you think about that. So there is this, later on in chapter 10, there was something that kind of caught my eye again. So he says, "Why do you call to my remembrance," I rejoined, "circumstances of which I shudder to reflect, that I have been the miserable origin and author? Cursed by the day, abhorred devil, in which you first saw light. Cursed, although I curse myself, be the hands that formed you. You have made me wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I am just to you or not. Begone, relieve me from the sight of your detested form." "Thus I relieve thee, my Creator," he said, and placed his hated hands before my eyes, which I flung from me with violence. "Thus I take thee a sight from which you abhor. Still thou canst listen to me and grant thy compassion. By the virtues that I have once possessed, I demand this from you. Hear my tale, it is long and strange, and the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens, before it descends to hide itself behind your snowy precipices and illuminate another world. You will have heard my story and can decide. On you it rests whether I quit forever the neighborhood of man and lead a harmless life, or become the scourge of your fellow creatures and the author of your own speedy ruin." As he said this, he led the way across the ice, and I followed. My heart was full. I did not answer him, but I proceeded. I weighed the various arguments that he had used and determined to listen to his tale. I was partly urged by curiosity, and compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time, also, I felt what duties of the Creator towards his creature were, and that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. We crossed the ice, therefore, and ascended the opposite rock. The air was cold, and the rain again began to descend. We entered the hut, the fiend with an air of exultation, I with a heavy heart and depressed spirit, but I consented to listen, and seating myself upon the fire by which my odious companion had lighted, he thus began his tale. So, here we are, and we're in the middle of the story, and you learn more about his life than what is portrayed in the movie. The movie focuses on the fact that he wants this Henry Frankenstein. As I mentioned before, in the book, his name is Victor, but there is a Henry in the book as well, but Henry is Dr. Frankenstein in the movie. And you see what he created and his disgust and his horror of what he created. He shares, what's interesting is that he shares what he is going through, and he shares it with people, and at first they don't understand. They almost think him mad. But he's also a wonderful, he's a caring man who loves his family, and yet he was stricken with this idea of making life from death, rebuilding it, recreating it, taking death that has been something that has long been dead, and creating life out of it. So, I recommend that if you haven't read Frankenstein, or you have read it, but it's been a very long time, you might want to pick yourself up a copy. I mean, a lot of classic books, you could get them for next to nothing on Kindle. I wanted the paperback version of Frankenstein so I can add it to my collection, and this one I'm actually reading out of the paperback, which I love to do sometimes, unless they're gifts. And I think that after you read the book and you're trying to figure out something, then take a look at the movie. It's the original in 1931 film. I'm sure they've made plenty afterwards, various types of Frankenstein movies, but watch the original. And I know for a fact, because I have bought it, that it is on Amazon Prime, so you can rent it or you can purchase it to watch whenever you want to. So this is just kind of part of stories of classic stories that I'm kind of going back to and rereading and reconnecting with them. So in future episodes, there will be more readings and discussions of classic books, classic authors. I may even delve into classic plays. Sometimes you may have seen the play on a stage or in a movie and somebody's portraying it and you're like, what? So that happened to me, and I was like, I have never read that. I was thinking about the play Our Town. I've only seen bits and pieces when they do it on TV or in a movie, and they're talking about some high school play or something. So things like that are coming up. I will be, I've printed out a bunch of plays, and I'll be looking at them. I have written 2 in my life. One, I turned a story into a play, and the other one, I just did a 3-scene play, or a 3-act play, which is, basically, I did it in the process of getting my degree. So this is, all about classic works. Maybe you forgot about something. If you think back, what were you reading when you were in 3rd grade? What were you reading when you were in high school? Did you just read as much as you could to write your book report? Or did you fall in love with characters and authors? Or did you find yourself just like, oh, I don't really like this book at all? I have authors that I like, classic authors, and some I don't like their work. I don't know them personally, so I can't say I like them or not. And that's just my opinion of that. Some authors, some of their work I do like, and some I'm not too fond of, and that's just me. But so take a step back and think about what you like to read, what you used to like to read. Even if you go back to like the books of some of my favorites were when I was a kid were Ramona the Pest books, and I just loved that. And sometimes I'll pick one up and I'll just read it. I am starting, and I will do a future episode, is to reread all of the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, and not just the ones in her series that are tailored more for younger readers, and also were the inspiration for the television show that was on in the 80s, 1980s that is. But you'll be hearing more from me about those particular topics. I look forward to sharing my thoughts with you. And you can always comment on this podcast and share what you like to read. So if you're an author and you want your book to be on the show, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast for more information. If you're an author and you want your book to be reviewed, go to amysbookshelfreviews.com for more information. Please feel free to subscribe to my website, where you'll get all the great email campaigns, blog posts about authors, their books, and my recommendations. You might just be as lucky as I am to find that hidden gem that keeps you reading work from your new favorite author. Be well and be safe, and thank you all, and talk to you next week. This has been Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. Thank you for listening. And always, be kind and stay safe. Thank you.